Hey everybody, it's Henry and Irene with BrainStormAcres. We have a few questions that people have asked that we're going to try and give some answers to today. First, let's start off with how Jack is doing. Irene mentioned in a recent video that he had to go to the vet. We took him to Flagstaff, which is about 60 miles, and he was checked out.
Right. And they didn't find a darn thing. And a couple of days later, it got so bad he could barely walk, and he was crying and the whole thing. So, of course, it was a weekend, so, of course, we had to go to the emergency vet.
Which we did.
And they were awesome, and we all wore our little masks, and they took a look at him, and they found some sore spots on his back, and their conclusion was old age. But but they did an x-ray to make sure what was going on, and he's got some prednisone steroids to reduce inflammation, and we've started him on supplements, and yeah, he's doing a lot better. He's pretty much his same old little bouncy self. We're trying to be careful not to let him bounce too much because we don't want him to re-injure himself. He's doing better.
He's back to being happy, which is good.
Yeah, most of the time.
So the first question was from somebody who didn't comment on our channel. They contacted us another way. And that was about how close should she plant black radishes?
Yeah. She discovered the black radishes at the grocery this year and discovered she really liked them because they're spicier than the regular ones. So she thought she'd grow them at home. And they said, I forget whether they said 2 to 3 inches or something like that on the packet that she had. And she felt like looking at them, they were a little too close together. And what should she do about it? And I said, well, I would leave them and see how they do. But if you feel like you have to thin them out, eat them. You know, you can eat radishes, including the leaves. Now, some varieties of radishes have a sort of a furry leaf, which some people may not like the texture of. But you can eat them raw in salads. You can just nip them off. And she also had some onions that she was kind of wondering about thinning out. And I said the same thing. Little baby onions are awesome in salads.
You know, radish leaves, for my liking, are not all that great because you get some little hairs on the underside of the leaves on a lot of them.
Right, depends on the variety.
And that's just unpleasant in my mouth. Other than that, I like the flavor just fine.
Right. If you pick them super little, though, like if you knew you had some that were way too close together, before they develop permanent adult leaves, they'd be real tender, kind of almost like the sprout leaves.
Yeah, the next question came from a friend of ours who lives about 60 miles south of us in a somewhat more moderate climate. Not terribly more moderate, but their last frost date is a couple of weeks before ours.
Right, it's lower altitude than we are.
So, what she asked was, I'm planting peas. I've planted peas in some planters that are along the side of my patio. Will that work? And the answer is
sure. As long as they've got enough moisture and enough nutrition, peas are pretty sturdy. Now, hers are not going to last for too long because it's warmer down there than it is up here. And
it's getting warm up here.
We've had a heat spell lately. I think all the way to the Canadian border's had a heat spell lately, but specifically the Southwest has been really hot, 10 to 25 degrees warmer than normal. So, yeah, we've currently got peas growing in the dirt, and we've got some growing in a pot. Peas will grow in pots all the time. I see people doing that a lot lately on TV, it's on YouTube. And, no reason why it wouldn't work. But you are going to have to watch the fertilizer and the water because anything that's in a pot will dry out faster than something that's in the ground.
Now, speaking of drying out faster, one of our followers has had a little difficulty with some tomato plants that she's growing on her patio. And she's been having conversations back and forth with us about what could be causing her problems with those particular tomatoes. Now, what she said most recently was that she watered it in the morning, water came through the bottom, and then later on in the afternoon, the plant was all wilted, and the leaves were curling and had brown spots on the edge. Now, that's either a sign of too much water Or not enough.
But our guess is it's not enough, because what I've had happen before, in fact, I have to be careful of this currently with the pots that the kohlrabis are in. I have a good mix of potting soil and compost in those pots. And if you look closely, you can see that if you let it get dried out a little too much, it actually, the dirt actually contracts. So you'll have this, 1/16 of an inch gap around the outside of the dirt. When you pour water on top,
it runs through.
It runs around the outside. You'll get some that'll go down the middle, but most of it'll actually go around the outside. It makes it look like, oh, we're fine. We've got lots of water coming out the bottom. When the reality is, what you need to be doing is pouring it into the center, letting it soak down, pour it, and keep doing that until the soil actually re-expands and fills the entire pot. We had trouble with that last year with the potato pots too.
So the other problem that she had was that the tomato plants, these are now full-grown tomato plants, they were planted in a pot that was too small. So what she's busy doing is she's potting up into something bigger. I think she said she's going to try putting them into a 10-gallon pot, which would be perfect for those indeterminate tomatoes that she's growing. That also provides more of a reservoir for water. Right. It may be a little bit easier to water as well.
Yeah, well, hopefully you won't tend to get that dry cycle so quickly, but you're still going to have to watch for that 1/16 of an inch of crack around the edge. When you pour water on it, actually see where the water goes. Is it soaking down into the soil, or is it sliding over the edge and just sheeting down the inside without going into the soil?
The real giveaway on soil that's too dry is if you pour, let's say, a cup of water on the top and you get most of a cup out the bottom, unless the soil was damp to begin with, you have soil that is repelling the water.
Right.
It's hydrophobic,
right.
So it's not absorbing the water. It'll eventually absorb water. It just takes time. So watch those telltale signs. That will help you a lot when it comes to growing plants on a patio.
Definitely.
We had somebody ask us where we live. Well,
nowhere. In the middle of nowhere.
We do live in the middle of nowhere, more or less. We're about 50 miles from Flagstaff west and about 50 miles north of Prescott, which is in the middle of nowhere. The main road that goes to our place is about 2.5 miles on a dirt road, about 2 miles on a paved road, and then our driveway is about 3/4 of a mile long. Now, our driveway is just fine. We have it graveled. We can travel it in all kinds of weather without a problem. This year we haven't had huge deluges of rain. We've had 3, 4, 5 inches of rain in an hour before, which is just beyond belief.
That's pretty cool, but you get to watch the rain gauge actually doing this. But you also know that the main road's going to be gone the next time you go out.
Now, we get snow in the wintertime. We get rain, generally speaking, around July.
It's called the monsoon season in Arizona.
And then we'll have some rain later in the fall and then early in the winter, so probably December, January, but not a whole lot. We only get about 11 inches of rain a year here.
Yeah.
Which makes gardening a little bit of a challenge because if you think about it, all the rain comes at the wrong time of year.
Yeah, well, it either comes as snow, in which case, actually it's good when it comes to snow because if it melts off slowly, at least it soaks into the ground and creates a moisture reservoir. But that's usually very thoroughly gone by the end of April.
Now, we had one person ask a question, and it's one that I kind of scratched my head about. And we've done it before, but the question was, I soaked my peas before I planted them. Did I make a mistake? And the answer is, no, you didn't make a mistake.
Well, it depends on how long you soaked them for. If you soaked them for a week, you made a mistake. But if you soaked them overnight or for a few hours, definitely not. The problem with soaking for super long periods of time is that you can actually drown them. It'd be the same as if you had a flood and everything was underwater for too long. But normally, some people like to, some people swear at it, some people swear on it. If you have treated peas that have been treated with a fungicide, they do not recommend that you soak them ahead of time. The whole point is to have that fungicide deposited where the pea seed is so that if fungus that's in the soil attempts to attack the pea seed as it begins to germinate, it's killed.
And it does a great job of doing that.
Yeah, it really does help a lot if you have that problem where you are.
We had another question. We seem to be growing a lot of variety of vegetables, which we do this year because we're going to be home all summer long, which is unusual for us. We're usually gone for an extended period of time in the summer, going to events where we sell Irene's products at those events. We're not doing that this year because those events have been canceled.
Right. Everything's been canceled through the end of August at least. And I'm not going to hold my breath for the October event either.
So the question was, how do we preserve our vegetables? And the answer is pretty simple. Some things we'll can.
Mm-hmm.
Some things we freeze. We prefer fresh frozen peas. We prefer
green beans,
asparagus,
snow peas.
Those kinds of things we prefer to blanch and freeze in meal-sized packets.
Right.
And stick them in the deep freeze.
Right.
That way they'll last us until next spring.
Right. Well, back when we used to have people come visit once in a while. Yeah, sometimes we would.
There's no need for social distancing here because, well, it's 3/4 of a mile to our nearest neighborhood, to our nearest neighbor, and both of our children live on the West Coast, so it's more than 1,000 miles away. So we don't have people dropping by casually, and the people who do call before they do.
Oh yeah, this is not you don't stop in at people's houses casually around here. You just don't. It's not part of the etiquette. But back to freezing things. When we used to adjust our veggies so that if we did have company or something like that coming, what we would do is we would actually take the blanched vegetables and put them on wax paper and freeze them on cookie trays. Then we would do a loose pack.
Right.
And that's also handy if you're not sure whether you're going to be doing stir fry or, do you want just a few green beans or do you want a big pile? Now what I usually do is I will freeze up small, what I call dinner packs, and then I also make bigger ones that are like 4 times as much. That's what I would use when I do a stir fry, and I want a lot of green beans in there. And I do sort of the same thing with snow peas and things like that too.
The last question that we're going to answer today was that a friend of ours on YouTube did some damage to a finger and he ended up needing stitches in it. Well, it's ironic because the same day that he talked to us about having done that, I was working on a fence with Irene and the gate shifted and I split my thumb. Accidents happen on the homestead. You need to be prepared for pretty much anything that's going to happen like that. We have first aid kits, we have larger aid kits, we have absurd aid kits, we have what's necessary to take care of ourselves on the homestead, and if we need to be transported to a hospital or something like that, we have things that will keep us until we can get there.
Right. You have to be self-sufficient to live out. And that includes almost anywhere in the United States. I've got friends who live in Virginia that it's still, a half an hour drive or more to a hospital. I recommend highly that you be aware of where your nearest emergency facility is, what they can handle, because there are some dock-in-the-boxes that can handle broken bones as long as they don't require surgery.
Yeah.
So if it's a simple break, they can splint you and all that kind of stuff. But there are some that can't because they don't have the correct x-ray facilities. So know what your local facility has. Oh, we have somebody sneaking up on us here. There's a cat sneaking up on us.
Thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons. And don't forget to ring the bell for notifications. We've seen YouTube doing a lot of interesting things this year recently where we've been unsubscribed from channels that we've followed for years.
Yeah.
So if you don't see something from us, we generally put out a new show 5 times or 6 times a week.
Right.
Early in the morning, about 3 o'clock in the morning East Coast time. So if you don't see something from us for a while, it doesn't mean that something untoward's happened. We may not have internet connection, but go take a look. You might have been unsubscribed. Thanks for watching. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
There's a pussycat back in the...